I'll never forget the moment my father leaned in close at my own wedding, his lips brushing my ear like he was sharing some tender blessing. Instead, what came out was poison. "You're married now," he said in that gravelly voice, smelling of whiskey and wintergreen mints, "so disappear from this family forever." I froze, staring at the string lights hanging above the rented church hall in Bloomington, Indiana, where the reception was in full swing. Folks were laughing, clinking glasses, and the DJ was playing a scratchy old Garth Brooks song. To anyone looking, we probably seemed like father and daughter having a private word. But inside my stomach turned cold. He didn't look at me with pride. Not with joy. Just that same hard glare I'd grown used to since Mom died. I forced a polite nod. My training in the Army taught me how to keep a straight face when bullets were flying. Compared to that, swallowing down tears in front of family wasn't so hard. I walked back to Michael, my new husband, who was standing by the punch bowl in his borrowed suit, nervously talking to one of my old high school friends. I slipped my hand into his, squeezed once, and smiled like nothing had happened. But in my head, the words rang over and over again. Disappear from this family forever. The whole day had been awkward from the start. The church smelled of old wood polish and fried chicken because the ladies from First Baptist had catered the food themselves. It was simple, but it was ours. Michael's folks drove up from Terre Haute and brought a homemade cake with thick buttercream frosting. People said it tasted like weddings back in the 60s. My Army buddies from Fort Hood came in uniform, their polished boots clicking against the linoleum floor. It should have been a day of joy. And yet there was Dad. Tommy Lawson, 62 years old, balding under that trucker cap he never left at home until today. He came in a stiff suit that didn't fit him right. Ty crooked his hand, clutching the arm of Carla Jenkins, his so-called fiancée. She was a bleach blonde woman with a smoker's cough and sharp perfume that clung to the air long after she walked past. Folks from town whispered about her, but she walked around smiling like the Queen of Indiana. I noticed right away he'd put her in Mom's old seat up front, the seat that should have been left empty in honor of Linda Lawson, my mother, the woman who raised me and held my hand through deployments until cancer took her 5 years ago. I tried not to think about it as I walked down the aisle. I told myself I could get through one day. But when the vows were done and the rice was thrown and everyone clapped, Dad still found his chance to twist the knife. Later, I stepped out into the church parking lot to catch my breath. The January air bit at my cheeks. Michael followed me, his coat draped over his arm, his breath fogging up under the dim yellow streetlight. "You okay, Beck?" he asked, his voice gentle, like he knew the answer already. I shook my head and laughed once bitter. He told me I don't belong, said I should disappear. Michael's jaw tightened. He'd never liked my father, but he respected that I tried to keep peace. He'd say that in front of Carla. No, just me. Just quiet enough that nobody else could hear. That's how he works. Michael put his coat around my shoulders. "We'll go home soon. You don't have to stand here with him anymore." Inside, people were still dancing. Carla's teenage boy Dylan strutted around in his new boots, bragging about the truck his mom's fiancé had bought him. Dad laughed and clapped him on the back like Dylan was the son he'd always wanted. I stood at the edge of the floor watching them, my heart burning in my chest. It wasn't just the words from tonight. It was years stacked on years. Every holiday where I came home in uniform proud and he barely looked up. Every time he slipped money to Carla's boy while telling me I was too independent to need help. Every time he made me feel like Mom's death was somehow my fault because she'd left the apartment to me. I thought of that apartment, the one off Kirkwood Avenue with the peeling yellow paint. Mom had worked 2 jobs to buy it, and when she was gone, she left it in my name. Dad hated that. He said it was family property and should have gone to him. But Mom had wanted me to have something of my own, a place that couldn't be taken away. Standing there in my wedding dress, watching my father toast with his mistress, I realized something. Maybe I couldn't make him see me as his daughter, but I could make him respect the one thing Mom had given me. So I smiled. I smiled wider than the pain inside me, and I let him think I was just the polite daughter who'd nod and disappear quietly. But in my mind, a new plan was already unfolding. The morning after the wedding, I woke up before the sun and lay there, listening to the house breathe. Michael's duplex on the south side of Bloomington is quiet at dawn, furnace kicking on with a hollow thud, a neighbor's porch light clicking off the faint hiss of tires on wet pavement out on Walnut. I could still smell the hairspray from last night in my pillowcase and the sugar of the buttercream on my tongue. My calves ached from those ridiculous heels the bridesmaids talked me into. Somewhere down the hall, a pipe ticked as it cooled. The silence sat with me like an old friend who didn't ask questions. Mom always liked early mornings, the calm before anyone needed anything. When I was a kid, I'd tiptoe to the kitchen and find her already dressed coffee in one hand, her other hand resting on the counter, just standing and thinking. She'd look at me and smile slow, like she'd been waiting on me to wake up. I could see her now. In my mind, Linda Lawson, dark hair pinned up the cheap gold wedding band she never took off robe sleeves, bumped with flour from the biscuits she made most Saturdays. I turned my phone over on the nightstand. 3 text messages from old classmates. "You looked gorgeous. We're so happy for you. Tell your dad thanks for the open bar." I stared at that last one until the bubble of anger rose and fizzed out again. Michael snored once and rolled toward me, his hand finding my shoulder in his sleep. I eased it back onto the blanket and sat up. In the bathroom mirror, the woman looking back at me had a soldier's stare and a smudge of mascara on her cheekbone. I pressed a washcloth under warm water and held it there until the heat bled into my skin. The line from Dad disappear from this family kept flickering like a neon sign that wouldn't die bright enough to light the ugliness around it. I was not going to spend another day begging to stand in the room where my mother raised me. I would not ask permission to keep what she'd put in my name with her own hand. I made coffee in the dented Mr. Coffee machine on the counter, the one Michael got from his cousin after a garage sale. I like it strong and black. The bitter grounds smell like mornings in the barracks. I poured some into a chipped Hoosiers mug and carried it to the table. A sliver of sun cut through the blinds and fell across the legal folder I'd put there last night. Mom's will the deed to the apartment on Kirkwood. The letter from her lawyer, dated the week before she died. I ran my fingers along the paper ridge of the envelope, then set it down like it might break if I held it wrong. I remembered the day Mom told me how she'd saved and saved clipping coupons until the scissors stuck taking extra shifts at the grocery store bakery and buying that little 2-bedroom when I left for basic. "A woman should have something that's hers," she said, tapping the kitchen table with her finger. "Not because she's planning to run, but because she's planning to stand." She smiled at me, tired around the eyes but stubborn in the mouth. "One day, if you need to start over, you won't be starting from nothing." When cancer came, she tried to act like it wasn't rude to show up at 49. She wore a scarf to church and brought lemon bars to the fellowship hall and told everybody she was fine. Really just tired, while the bones in her wrists started to show. I drove up on weekend passes as often as I could, braided her hair when it grew patchy, learned which pills made her nauseous, and which ones she called the nice ones. Dad mowed the lawn in long, angry rows and slammed doors. The house went quiet the day Mom told him she was leaving the apartment to me. I heard the quiet like a shout. After she died, he didn't come to the reading of the will. He called me later and said it wasn't right that family property stayed with the head of the household. I told him Mom bought it with the bakery checks he didn't cash. He hung up. I flipped open the folder and traced the embossed letterhead with my thumb. Randall and Cobb, attorneys at law. I'd met Mr. Randall twice once to sign a power of attorney while I was still deployed once, to update my own life insurance beneficiary when I re-upped. He's one of those older lawyers who wears wool suits even in June and calls everybody by their first name without sounding fake. His office smells like old books and peppermint. He was Mom's lawyer. She trusted him. That meant something to me. Michael stepped into the kitchen, hair mashed on one side, t-shirt wrinkled. "You're up early," he said, voice scratchy. "Couldn't sleep. Coffee's there." He poured a mug and sat peering at the papers. "You sure you want to start this today?" "I don't want it to fester." I wrapped both hands around the warm ceramic and felt my pulse settle. He told me to disappear. He's been telling me that in little ways since Mom died. Yesterday, he just stopped pretending. I'm done pretending too. Michael nodded, slow and deliberate, the way he does when he's tightening lug nuts. You got my back. You know that. I know. I reached across and squeezed his fingers. I'm not trying to ruin him. I just want the line drawn where Mom drew it. He blew on his coffee. Then call Randall. I did. The receptionist recognized my name and put me through. Randall's voice was calm, measured like a metronome. I told him about the apartment, the will, the joint account Dad had linked with Carla's name on it, and the words Dad had said last night. I didn't cry. I kept it clean and straight. Rebecca, he said, and I could hear the sympathy. Without pity, your mother was very clear. The apartment is yours. If you wish to sell, you can list it today. As for the account, Mrs. Lawson added a stipulation. When she redrafted her will, the family savings were not to be used for anyone outside her immediate family without her written consent. She foresaw disagreements. A freeze pending review is within your rights. It'll make him furious, I said. He's already furious. This will make him lawful. He paused. Come in this afternoon. We'll get the listing started and I'll file the necessary notices with the bank and the court. After I hung up, I felt lighter and heavier at the same time, like I'd set down one burden and picked up another made of iron but fitted to my size. Michael slid a plate of toast across the table. Eat something, he said. You'll shake less. I forced down a slice, tasted more salt than butter. Then I showered, braided my hair, and put on jeans, boots, and a plain black sweater clothes that didn't make a big statement. Outside, the air had that metallic bite you get before snow. I drove my old Corolla across town past the Monroe County Courthouse with its limestone dome and the statue of a soldier out front. I nodded to him when the light turned red. I don't know why. Maybe I wanted a witness. Randall's office was on the second floor of a building that used to be a bank. The stairs creaked under my weight. The receptionist Janice gave me a soft smile and pointed to the tea caddy. Peppermint like your mom liked, she said. My eyes stung and then settled. In Randall's office, I signed papers until my signature looked like a stranger's name. We called a realtor, Joe from Keller Williams, who said the apartment's location near campus would get offers quick even with the peeling paint. I gave Randall the bank account numbers. I had the emails Carla had sent, bragging about our savings for Dylan's truck and Mom's stipulation sheet. He scanned each page like a man searching for landmines and nodded when he was done. You'll get blowback, he said evenly. Don't answer it. Let me. Keep everything in writing. Be civil. Let the facts do the talking. I thought of Mom's kitchen table, her finger tapping. A woman should have something that's hers. I tucked a copy of the deed into my purse and stood. On the way home, I swung by the apartment. The porch light was burned out. The ivy I'd forgotten to trim had started to claim the siding again, snaking up around the little upstairs window that used to be my bedroom. I ran a hand along the railing, felt the cold flake of paint under my palm, and unlocked the door. The air was stale with dust and lemon cleaner. Mom's Afghan still lay folded on the back of the couch where I'd left it last spring. I lifted it to my face and breathed, half hoping it held her. It didn't, not really, but the memory did. I'm doing it, Mom, I said into the empty room. Not to hurt him, to keep you with me. Outside, the clouds stacked low and gray. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Michael asking if I wanted chili for supper. I texted back yes and locked the door behind me. When the key clicked, I felt something inside me click too. A safe turning, a latch falling into place. I didn't know then how loud the fallout would be. I only knew I'd started the right kind of fire, the kind that keeps you alive through winter. You don't get to the point of telling your only daughter to disappear forever in one night. That kind of poison brews slow, drop by drop, year after year, until it fills a man's veins. By the time my wedding came around, Dad had been serving me that poison so long, I could almost predict the taste. I remember the first real crack between us showing after Mom passed. The funeral was on a raw March afternoon, the kind where Indiana skies turn the color of wet newspaper and the mud sucks at your shoes. Folks from church brought casseroles, tuna green bean potato, and the house smelled like someone was trying to cook grief out of us. After the service, Dad stood in the kitchen with a beer in hand, laughing too loud at something Carla said. She wasn't even subtle about being there. People whispered, but Dad acted like he couldn't hear. I stood in the hallway, holding Mom's scarf, the one she wore on her last chemo day. He glanced at me once, then turned his back. That's when it hit me, whatever part of him still belonged to Mom had been buried with her. The years after that were a steady slide. Carla started showing up everywhere. At first, it was just dinners, then Christmas, then Easter. She brought Dylan along, all elbows and attitude, 13 years old and already smirking like he owned the place. Dad bought him a PlayStation that first Christmas, while I got a $25 gas card with "Don't spend it all at once" scribbled on the envelope. I didn't say anything. I was still in uniform then, proud of serving, proud of carrying Mom's memory with me, but inside I felt like a guest in my own house. One summer, while I was back on leave, I found Dad in the driveway tossing Dylan the keys to a brand new Ford Ranger. "Every boy needs wheels," he said, puffing his chest. Dylan revved the engine like he'd been handed a throne. I stood there in my fatigues, boots dusty from training, and Dad didn't even notice. Later that night, he grumbled about how I never gave him grandchildren, like my service made me less of a woman. Then there was the joint account. Mom had started it years ago as savings for emergencies. After she passed, Dad added Carla's name without so much as a conversation. Suddenly, that account was paying for Dylan's baseball trips, Carla's salon visits, even the down payment on the Ranger. When I asked about it once, Dad barked, "You don't need money, Rebecca. The Army feeds you." I stopped asking. But the worst wound came the year I tried to come home for Thanksgiving. I'd been in Iraq, my body still humming from the desert heat, and all I wanted was turkey and Mom's stuffing recipe. I called ahead, told him I was coming, and he said fine. When I showed up, Carla opened the door. The table was already set, plates clinking. Dylan seated at the head like a little prince. There was no chair for me. Dad barely looked up from carving the bird. "You should have called earlier," he muttered. "We didn't plan for extra." I ate a roll, standing at the counter, and left before pie. On the drive back to base, I cried into the steering wheel, not because of the food, but because it was clear I wasn't part of the picture anymore. Even the town started to notice. Folks at the grocery store would nod politely, then whisper as I walked past. "That's Tommy Lawson's girl, the one he never mentions." Carla, on the other hand, strutted through the aisles with her manicured nails, bragging about Dylan's grades, about how Tommy takes such good care of us. People listened because she spoke like it was already true. The betrayal wasn't loud. It wasn't one big explosion. It was a drip, a faucet that never stopped leaking, a laugh too loud at the wrong moment, a seat taken at the table, a check written from the wrong account, a hug that never came. By the time Dad whispered those words at my wedding, "Disappear from this family forever," I realized he wasn't changing. He'd been chiseling me out of his life for years. The only surprise was how final he finally made it. That history, every cut and bruise and silence, hardened me. It meant that when the time came to push back, I wasn't scared. I'd already been living without his approval, his love, his protection. All that was left to do was claim what my mother had given me and stop letting him take it away piece by piece. The morning after I met with Randall, I woke up with a knot in my stomach, but also a strange kind of calm. Soldiers know the feeling you're about to walk into something ugly, but you've got your gear ready, your boots laced tight. There's fear, yes, but also clarity. I sat at the kitchen table with a notepad, scribbling down the steps I needed to take. It felt almost like a mission briefing. Objective 1, finalize the apartment listing. Objective 2, file the freeze order on the joint account. Objective 3, don't let Dad drag me into a shouting match. The Army had taught me discipline. I was going to use it. Michael leaned against the counter, coffee steaming in his hand. "Beck," he said, "you don't have to go through with this today. You just got married. We could drive down to Nashville, take a breather." I looked at him, at the worry in his blue eyes, and shook my head. "No. If I wait, I'll talk myself out of it. He's been taking pieces of me for years. I need to draw the line now while I still have something left." Michael nodded. He didn't argue. That's what I loved about him. He wasn't flashy, but he steadied me like bedrock. By noon, I was back in Randall's office, signing the paperwork that would officially put the apartment on the market. The realtor Joe met us there. She had red hair piled high and a laugh that could shake dust out of the rafters. "Student rentals are hot right now," she said, flipping through her clipboard. "Near campus. 2 bedrooms, you'll have offers by the weekend. I'll get photos taken tomorrow." I nodded, feeling the weight of Mom's apartment shift from memory to strategy. Randall slid another document across the desk. "This is the bank freeze order. Once it's filed, your father won't be able to move funds until the court reviews it. That could take weeks, maybe months." "Good," I said, signing my name with a steady hand. "Let him stew." Randall raised his eyebrows. "He'll call. He'll yell. He may even show up at your door." "Don't engage. Tell him to go through me." Sure enough, by that evening, the first voicemail landed. Dad's voice was thick with rage. "You think you're clever. Rebecca selling that dump your mother left you, freezing my money. Who do you think you are? You're nothing but a soldier girl with no family. Don't you dare cross me." I listened once, then deleted it. Michael watched me, waiting for me to flinch. I didn't. "This is just noise," I said. "Let him scream into the void. I've heard worse in Baghdad." Michael cracked a small grin. "Fair point." The next few days, the noise got louder. Carla left a message too, her voice sharp and shrill. "How could you do this to your father? He's done so much for you. Dylan needs that money for college." I laughed out loud when I heard it. "Funny," I muttered. "No one thought I needed help for college, or the army, or life." I kept every voicemail, every text, every thinly veiled threat. Randall told me to document everything. I did labeling each file on my laptop with the date and time like evidence bags in a case. At night when the house got quiet, I'd sit with Michael on the couch, our dog curled at our feet, and remind myself why I was doing this. Not for revenge, not even to hurt Dad. I was doing it for Mom, for the woman who worked herself to the bone so I'd have something of my own. For the soldier in me who refused to be erased. A week later, Dylan showed up in the driveway, revving his truck like some kind of war cry. I watched from the window as Michael walked outside, hands in his pockets, calm as a pond. "Your daddy home," Dylan sneered. "Nope," Michael said. "But I am. State your business." "You tell Rebecca she better stop this crap. Dad says she's tearing this family apart." Michael leaned against the railing, unshaken. "Looks to me like your dad did that a long time ago." Dylan cursed and spun his tires, spraying gravel before roaring off. Michael came back inside, brushed dust off his jeans, and said, "Kids got more horsepower than brains." I laughed, but my chest felt tight. "This is going to get uglier," I whispered. "Then we'll get tougher," Michael replied. That night, lying in bed, I thought about what Mom would say if she could see me now. I pictured her folding laundry at the kitchen table, looking up with that patient smile. "You're doing right, Becky," she'd say. "Standing your ground isn't cruelty. It's survival." Her voice steadied me. By the end of that week, the apartment had 3 offers. The highest one came from a young couple looking for their first home. I signed the acceptance feeling like I'd planted a flag on a battlefield. The freeze order went through as well. The bank sent notice that all withdrawals on the joint account were suspended pending review. I could almost hear Dad's roar from across town. I wasn't disappearing. I wasn't vanishing quietly like he wanted. I was still here. And for the first time in years, I felt like I belonged exactly where I stood. The first real fallout came on a Saturday morning, about a week after the freeze order took effect. Michael and I were fixing breakfast, scrambled eggs, toast, and strong coffee, when my phone started buzzing across the kitchen counter. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. 30 seconds later, it rang again. This time, I picked up, bracing myself. "Rebecca, what the hell have you done?" Dad's voice exploded through the line so loud I had to hold the phone away. I go to pay for a deposit, and they tell me my account's frozen. My account? You got no right? No right. You think you can run my life from that little apartment your mother conned me out of. I waited for him to stop shouting. "Dad, you know the will. Mom set boundaries. I'm only making sure they're respected." "You're tearing this family apart," he roared. I almost laughed. "What family?" "Dad." The one where I sit at Thanksgiving with no chair, or the one where Dylan gets a new truck while you tell me the army feeds me enough? Which family are we talking about? Silence stretched on the other end. Then a growl. You'll regret this. Click. Michael buttered his toast, watching me with careful eyes. He's rattled, he said. He's cornered, I corrected. The next week, Carla left a message dripping with sugar and venom. Rebecca, honey, you don't understand. Your daddy's just trying to take care of us. Dylan's about to graduate and this account freeze is messing everything up. Can't you just let it go? Be reasonable for once. I saved the voicemail just like Randall told me. That evening, I replayed it while Michael was changing the oil on a neighbor's car in the driveway. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, listening to Carla's false sweetness again. Then I deleted it. Life at home took on a strange rhythm. By day, Michael went to work at the shop, and I picked up shifts at the community center, helping veterans file benefits paperwork. By night, we sat on our second-hand couch dog, curled between us watching reruns of Jeopardy, while my phone lit up with angry calls. I didn't answer most of them. When I did, I kept my voice steady, short, almost military. One evening, Dylan drove by, slow his Ranger, rumbling like a challenge. I stood at the window and watched him roll past twice before speeding off. Michael glanced up from his crossword. He wants a reaction. He won't get one, I said. Still, the weight of it all pressed on me. At church on Sundays, folks glanced at me with curious eyes. Some whispered sympathy. Others clucked tongues like I'd done something shameful. In small towns, news travels faster than reason. I smiled politely, shook hands, and let them wonder. One woman, Mrs. Jenkins, no relation to Carla, squeezed my arm after service. Your mom would be proud, Rebecca. Don't let anyone tell you different. Those words stayed with me all week. Meanwhile, Randall kept me updated. The apartment sale went through quickly. Joe was right. A young couple with a toddler bought it cash in hand. When I signed the final papers, I felt like I was signing away my childhood and securing my future all at once. The check was more money than I'd ever held in my life. We deposited it into a new account, my name only. The freeze order dragged on Dad, filing complaints through his lawyer insisting it wasn't fair. But every time Randall sent me copies of the filings and his calm notes, all within your rights. Let the process work. Still, I couldn't stop thinking about Dad's face at the wedding, the way his eyes burned with hate when he leaned close. I'd seen that look before once, when I was 16, and asked him why he never told Mom he loved her once. When I told him I was enlisting instead of going straight to college. It was a look that said I'd never measure up to whatever dream he had in his head. At night, lying awake beside Michael, I replayed those memories. The way Dad laughed too loud with Carla, the way Dylan strutted around like the heir apparent. Each one was a coal on the fire inside me. Not a raging blaze, just a steady burn, the kind you bank for winter. Then came the day I ran into them at the grocery store. I was picking out apples when I heard Carla's voice in the next aisle, loud as ever. She's just jealous, she was saying to a friend. Rebecca can't stand that her father finally found someone who appreciates him. All this legal nonsense, childish. I stepped around the corner, bag of apples in hand. Carla's eyes widened for half a second before narrowing. Dad stood beside her, red-faced, pretending to study the bread loaves. Dylan hovered, arms crossed, smirk plastered on. Morning, I said, calm as stone. Carla sniffed. Morning? Dad didn't look at me. He grabbed a loaf and tossed it in the cart. Let's go. I watched them wheel away, their cart squeaking, and felt something shift inside me. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about dignity, about Mom's memory, about drawing the line so clear even the town gossips could see it. That night, I sat at the kitchen table, bills spread out, the apartment check still fresh in my account. Michael came in, grease on his hands, and asked, "You okay?" I nodded. Better than okay. I'm not invisible anymore. He squeezed my shoulder. Then keep standing tall, Beck. The longer they stew, the more their own words do the damage. He was right. Revenge wasn't about screaming louder. It was about holding steady until the other side cracked. The summons came in a plain envelope, but it felt heavier than lead. Probate hearing, Monroe County Courthouse, scheduled for mid-March. Dad had filed to contest Mom's will, claiming undue influence, saying I manipulated her into leaving me the apartment and access to family funds. Carla's name was listed too, though she had no legal standing. I sat at the kitchen table, letters spread out like a battle plan, and felt a strange relief. At last, all the whispers, the threats, the phone calls, they'd have to face me in the open under the eyes of the law. Michael leaned over my shoulder, reading the notice. Guess it's time. Yeah, I said. My voice was steady, but my pulse drummed in my ears. It's time. The courthouse in downtown Bloomington is an old limestone building, its dome rising pale against the gray Indiana sky. The morning of the hearing, I walked up the stone steps in my pressed black slacks and a navy blazer, my hair pulled back tight. Michael walked beside me in a clean shirt and tie. I could feel the eyes of townsfolk as we passed, neighbors, old classmates, curious strangers who'd heard the gossip. In small towns, court hearings are a kind of theater. Inside the wood-paneled courtroom smelled faintly of varnish and dust. I sat at one table with Randall, his wool suit neat as ever, his leather briefcase open like a soldier's kit. Across the aisle sat Dad, Carla perched at his side in a low-cut blouse, Dylan slouched behind them with headphones draped around his neck. Dad's face was flushed, jaw tight, his hands gripping the edge of the table like he could squeeze the outcome into shape. Judge Harris, a tall man with thinning gray hair, entered, and the bailiff called for order. His gavel echoed through the room sharp as a rifle shot. The hearing began with Dad's lawyer, a slick fellow from Indianapolis, arguing that Mom had been pressured in her final months to favor me unfairly. He painted me as manipulative, suggesting my military background made me intimidating. I sat still, hands folded, jaw clenched. Then Randall stood. His voice was calm, measured every word landing like a hammer driving a nail. Your Honor, Mrs. Lawson worked 2 jobs to purchase that apartment. She paid every mortgage check from her own account. She chose entirely of her own volition to leave it to her daughter. Here are the records. He handed the judge a thick file, the paper whispering as it landed. He moved on to the joint account. As for the so-called family funds, Mrs. Lawson's stipulation was clear: no withdrawals for non-family expenses without her written consent. Yet records show multiple payments for Mr. Lawson's fiancée, Ms. Jenkins, and her son, Dylan. Vehicles, trips, and personal expenses. My client, Rebecca Lawson, had every right to request a freeze pending review. The judge flipped through the paperwork. His brows furrowed, then rose. Dad exploded. This is garbage. She's lying. She's been lying since day 1. His voice cracked, filling the room. Carla gripped his arm, hissing, Tommy, sit down. Mr. Lawson, the judge said sharply, you will remain silent until recognized. One more outburst and I'll hold you in contempt. The room hushed. I could feel people's eyes on me. Folks from church, neighbors from the block, even the clerk from the grocery store, all waiting to see if I'd flinch. I didn't. Randall slid a final document across the table to the bailiff, who carried it to the judge. Your Honor, this is a letter written in Mrs. Lawson's hand 2 weeks before her passing. She states explicitly that she wants her daughter to have security, that she trusts Rebecca to honor her memory. It is notarized and witnessed. The judge read silently, then set the paper down with a soft sigh. This court finds that Rebecca Lawson acted fully within her rights, both in selling the apartment and in freezing the account pending review. The will stands as written. The petition to overturn is denied. A murmur rippled through the gallery. I heard gasps, whispers. She won. It was all true. Dad's face turned crimson. Carla's mouth fell open, then snapped shut. Lips pinched white. Dylan yanked off his headphones, muttering a curse. The judge rapped his gavel. This matter is settled. Court adjourned. As the bailiff called for order, Dad shoved back his chair, pointing a trembling finger at me. You'll pay for this, Rebecca. You think you're better than me? You're nothing without this family. I stood, smoothing my blazer, and turned to face him. My voice was calm, low enough that only the front rows could hear. I already am this family. The one Mom left me. The one you threw away. Then I turned and walked out Michael's hand, steady at my back, Randall close behind. On the courthouse steps, reporters from the local paper hovered with notepads. Neighbors whispered, some nodding, some shaking their heads. I breathed in the cool March air, crisp and sharp, and felt a weight lift. Michael squeezed my hand. "You did it, Beck." I shook my head. "Mom did. I just carried it through." That night, sitting at our kitchen table, I replayed the moment in my mind, the judge's voice, the gasps in the gallery, Dad's face collapsing under the weight of truth. It wasn't triumph I felt. It was justice. The kind of justice my mother would have believed in, quiet, firm, undeniable. The slow burn had finally boiled over, and in the ashes, I stood whole. The weeks after the courthouse hearing felt strange, like the town had tilted just a little on its axis. Everywhere I went, eyes followed. At the post office, the clerk slid my package across the counter with a quiet, "Good for you, Rebecca." At the gas station, an old farmer tipped his cap and said, "Your mom'd be proud." Even at church, where whispers had once stung my back, folks now stopped me in the fellowship hall, pressing my hand, telling me they'd seen the article in the Herald Times. Not everyone was kind. Some shook their heads, muttering that blood is thicker than water, that I'd embarrassed my father. But I carried myself steady because I knew the truth. Blood doesn't excuse cruelty, and family isn't a chain you're bound to, no matter how deep it cuts. Dad, on the other hand, unraveled. Carla was gone within a month. Rumors said she packed her things in the middle of the night after the account stayed frozen and no money flowed. Dylan sold the Ranger cheap and moved out of town. Dad still ran his plumbing supply shop for a while, but fewer folks wanted to buy from him after what they'd heard in open court. Small towns don't forget public shame. He grew meaner, more withdrawn. One afternoon, I saw him at the hardware store. He looked smaller somehow, shoulders hunched, hair thinner. He saw me too, but instead of glaring, he turned down another aisle. I let him go. For the first time, I felt no heat in my chest, just a tired kind of pity. Meanwhile, Michael and I started fresh. With the money from Mom's apartment, we bought a modest little ranch house on the edge of town, white siding, and a maple tree in the front yard. We painted the kitchen yellow because Mom always said yellow made mornings softer. Michael built a workbench in the garage, and I planted tomatoes out back. It wasn't fancy, but it was ours, paid for in full. I framed Mom's letter, the one she'd written to make her wishes clear, and hung it in the hallway. Every time I passed it, I felt her steady hand on my shoulder, reminding me that standing firm wasn't about revenge. It was about dignity, about not letting yourself be erased. One quiet Sunday evening, I drove to the cemetery with a bundle of daisies. I knelt at Mom's grave, brushed away leaves, and set the flowers down. "Mom," I whispered, "I kept what you gave me safe. He tried to strip me out of this family, but I held on. I hope you'd be proud." The wind rustled through the bare branches overhead. For a moment, I swear I could almost hear her voice. A woman should have something that's hers. I sat there until the sun dipped low, painting the stones gold, and finally stood brushing dirt from my knees. I felt lighter walking back to the car, like I'd finally laid something heavy down beside her. Looking back now, I don't feel triumph. I don't even feel anger anymore. What I feel is a kind of bittersweet peace. Dad will live with his choices, and I'll live with mine. And I know this cruelty may echo, but so does strength. Mom's gift wasn't just the apartment. It was the courage to protect myself, even when it meant standing alone. If you've listened this far, maybe you've got your own scars from family, your own stories of betrayal or resilience. I'd ask you to think about them tonight. Who stood by you when the world turned cold? What did you hold on to that was truly yours? And if this story meant something to you, I'd be grateful if you shared it or passed it along to someone who might need to hear it. Sometimes the hardest battles aren't fought overseas or in courtrooms. They're fought quietly at kitchen tables and family gatherings where dignity is on the line. Thank you for listening. Take care of yourself and take care of the people who see you for who you are.